The last thing I heard before the cold swallowed me was my daughter-in-law's voice, low and venomous, "Say hi to the sharks." A second later, I was overboard. My son, Brandon, didn't flinch. He stood on the deck of that glistening yacht, watching me sink with a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Their plan? Inherit my entire $2.7 billion estate. But later that night, when they walked through the door of my former home, I was there waiting for them. Alive. And not alone. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the Tuesday morning that should have been unremarkable. I was 66, healing from knee surgery and yearning to reconnect with the only family I had left. My late husband, Edward, had built a media conglomerate from scratch, and after his passing 2 years ago, I inherited it all. Since then, Brandon and his wife, Harper, had grown distant. So when Brandon called personally, not through an assistant, to invite me on a recovery cruise, I let myself hope. He said it would be just the three of us, like old times. I wore the emerald green dress Edward loved, took a cab to the marina, and forced down the pit in my stomach. The yacht was immaculate, easily worth more than most homes. Brandon greeted me with a hollow hug. Harper stood above on the deck, her grin polished and poisonous. "Isn't she stunning?" Brandon said of the boat. 50 feet of elegance. What he failed to mention was that it had been paid for with the $2.5 million I'd given him to invest in his startup. That business, I was beginning to realize, might never have existed. We set off, the New Jersey shoreline shrinking in the distance. Harper poured us mimosas. Talked about remodeling the mansion I'd signed over to them when Edward died. I thought it would bring us closer. I was wrong. Before we dive into this unforgettable story of betrayal, courage, and redemption, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what's coming. Then Brandon brought up my estate. Casually. "Have you thought about updating the trust, Mom? Make it easier for us to manage everything in case something happens?" His tone was sweet. Too sweet. Harper, meanwhile, was pretending to snap selfies, but her camera was angled at me, recording everything as I sipped champagne and spoke about legal matters. The truth clicked like a trap snapping shut. The push for power of attorney after my surgery. My financial advisor suddenly ghosting me. The confusion they encouraged, the paperwork they offered to handle while I recovered. "Brandon," I said, setting down my glass, "I'd like to return to shore." That was when his mask slipped. "I'm afraid that's not possible," he said flatly. "We need to talk about your health, your memory." "You've been forgetting things," Harper added. "We have documentation. Medical opinions. You're no longer capable of handling your finances." I was furious. But I stayed calm. The yacht was miles offshore. There was no one around. Just us and their trap. Brandon reached for a folder. Inside, documents transferring all my assets to them for my protection. "Sign it," he said. "We can do this easy, or not." "And if I refuse?" Harper's eyes glinted. A grieving family. An aging mother. Post-op disorientation. You fall overboard, a tragedy. It happens. I stood. My knee throbbed, but my mind was razor sharp. I looked at them, my son and the woman I had welcomed into our lives. "You won't get away with this." "Actually," Brandon replied, "we will." I turned toward the water, and that's when Harper gave a gentle push. Just enough. I stumbled. Fell. The cold slammed into me like concrete. As I fought to stay afloat, I heard Brandon yell theatrically. "Mom." "Oh no." And then Harper, her voice sharp and low into a phone, "She's gone. Start the paperwork Monday." They thought it was over. But fate intervened. A fishing boat appeared on the horizon, a small trawler manned by a seasoned captain named Jack McAllister and his teenage granddaughter, Lila. Jack didn't hesitate. He pulled me aboard, wrapped me in an old oil-scented blanket, and asked no questions. I told him everything. About the lies. The setup. The betrayal. So they decided being rich orphans beats being broke kids, Jack muttered. And now you're legally dead. What are you gonna do about it? That was the question. What does someone do when their own child tries to erase them? I made a decision, let them believe they won. Let them think I was lost at sea. And then? I would dismantle their illusion. Piece by piece. Jack knew someone who could help. A woman named Mrs. Evans who ran a bed and breakfast tucked in a cove outside of Montauk. She took one look at my soaking, shivering body and made soup without a word. That night, while Brandon and Harper were likely filing missing person reports and hugging reporters, I was warm, alive, and plotting their undoing. Jack became my eyes at the marina. I combed through online articles, watching as they painted a picture of a sweet, overwhelmed couple mourning the tragic loss of a mother who, according to them, had been losing her mind. They even ran an obituary. Said I'd died peacefully on the water. Asked for donations to dementia research. I laughed until I cried. A few days later, I watched my own funeral from a hill, binoculars trained on the graveside. Brandon and Harper looked devastated in black, Oscar-worthy performances. There were flowers, tears, speeches. And lies. But what struck me most was who wasn't there: my lawyer. My accountant. My financial planner. The people who should have been managing my estate. The ones who, perhaps, were in on the scheme. That night, I told Jack, I need to go back to my house. Isn't that risky? It's empty. They kept their penthouse. But the bills? Still being paid. Someone's using it. Jack nodded slowly. Then it's time to find out who. And just like that, the woman they thought was gone forever started walking right back into the center of their world. And this time? I wasn't just their mother. I was their reckoning. Jake dropped me 3 blocks from the house I'd once called home, a grand colonial in Boston's Beacon Hill, where I'd raised my son and shared a life with my late husband. I'd given it to David thinking it would keep our family close. That night, cloaked in darkness and dressed in anonymity, I approached from the back, still in disbelief that I needed to sneak into a home that used to be mine. The key, my original key, still worked. David had never thought to take it from me. The lock clicked open, and I slipped inside like a stranger in a museum of my past. The air smelled faintly of lavender and betrayal. Sheets draped over furniture suggested disuse, but underneath them, I saw upgrades, luxury sofas, brand new electronics, and kitchen staples far too fresh for a place supposedly uninhabited. In Robert's old study, I found the truth. The desk was cluttered with legal documents, forged financial statements, and something labeled in bold letters, the Marlene Plan. My name, reduced to a strategy. I flipped through the papers, taking photos of every vile page. They'd been building a case against me for over a year, fake diagnoses, staged episodes, manipulated prescriptions, all aimed at painting me as mentally unfit. The most damning item was a letter from someone signed only as MT. It read, "She's asking too many questions. Move to phase 3 within 2 weeks. Phase 3? That was my murder. My heart pounded as I heard a car pull up. Voices. David and Lily. I froze, then bolted toward the back just as they entered. From behind the hedges, I caught fragments of their conversation. Peterson bought it. She was sobbing. The will gets filed Monday. MT said full access in 6 weeks. Then a sound chilled my blood more than their words ever could, a baby crying. They'd never mentioned children. A baby meant another layer to this twisted plan. Jake picked me up 15 minutes later. I told him everything. He said nothing at first, then, they replaced you. The next morning, Jake took me to a friend who ran a no-questions-asked photo shop. As we waited, we pieced it together, fake documents, hidden conspirators, and now, a baby. What if the baby's not theirs? I said. What if they needed a child to secure the inheritance? You think they stole a baby? I think they bought one. The developed photos confirmed it. Records, fake medical reports, forged timelines. And among them, a birth certificate, baby Camden, born 3 weeks prior. Parents, David and Lily Wilson. But I'd seen Lily 4 days earlier. She wasn't recovering from childbirth. This document was fake. The pieces clicked into place. They weren't just thieves. They were traffickers of something far worse. I'm going back, I told Jake over breakfast. To the house? No. To follow them. Mrs. Chen, always listening, suggested a PI named Daniel Carter. Ex-cop. Quiet. Capable. He owes me a favor, she said. I met Daniel in his modest office above a deli. Told my story for the 3rd time that week. You want surveillance, identification, and proof, he said. How are you paying? I handed him an envelope. Emergency funds Robert and I had hidden years ago. I'll need photos and any addresses. He examined the documents carefully. One note caught his attention. This MT, I recognize the handwriting. Let me run a match. Before I left, he laid down a rule, check-ins every 12 hours. If I missed one, he went to the police. 2 days later, he had everything. Your son's been busy, Daniel said, spreading photos on Mrs. Chen's kitchen table. Lawyers, banks, and 3 visits to Whitmore Reproductive Solutions. Surrogacy? Discreet, high-end. They ordered a newborn to match their features. Paid in cash. Arranged 8 months ago. Mrs. Chen brought coffee as Daniel pulled out another photo. A woman with auburn hair shaking hands with David. Miranda Taylor. Partner at Taylor Finch and Associates. Estate planning expert. And married to your accountant. My stomach turned. She's built a business model, Daniel said. Targets wealthy elders with estranged families. Helps speed up transfers of assets under the guise of mental decline. You mean murder? Exactly. She's done it before. The conspiracy wasn't just personal. It was systemic. And it was time to bring it down. Say hello to karma, whispered my daughter-in-law as she gave me a gentle nudge off the stern of the yacht. My son, Thomas, just watched, his smile cold and triumphant. They thought they could vanish me, claim my fortune, and sail off into a life built on betrayal. But that evening, when they returned home, I was waiting, in the very armchair where my late husband once sat, holding a message they'd never forget. Let me rewind. It had started like any other Tuesday. At 69, I still clung to the idea that family meant loyalty, that blood mattered more than bank accounts. That morning, Thomas called me himself, not through an assistant. We're celebrating your recovery, Mom, he said, inviting me for a private cruise on their new yacht. Just the 3 of us. Like old times. I was still recovering from knee surgery and starved for affection since Martin's death 2 years earlier. I wore the sapphire blouse he loved, the one that matched my eyes, and took a cab to the marina in Newport. Their yacht was stunning, sleek, 40 feet of luxury. Thomas met me with a hug that felt rehearsed, while Helena, his wife, offered a smile as sharp as glass. Isn't she lovely? He said, referring to the boat. They didn't mention it had been bought with the $2.5 million I'd gifted them for his startup. We drifted along calm waters. Helena poured mimosas, chattering about renovations to the house, my old home, which I'd signed over to them after Martin died. Then Thomas steered the conversation toward my estate, asking subtle questions about my will and any plans to make things simpler. That's when I noticed Helena filming. Pretending to take selfies, but really capturing me sipping champagne and slurring legal talk. A setup. A performance. The surgery, the documents they helped me sign afterward, the sudden silence from my financial advisor, it all clicked. I'd like to go back to shore, I said, setting down my glass. Thomas's tone shifted. I'm afraid that's not an option, Mother. He spoke of confusion, memory lapses, dementia, all false. Helena stepped closer. We have it documented. Doctors agree you're not capable of managing your affairs. My fury rose like a storm. You're both deluded if you think this'll work. Thomas pulled out papers. Sign these, transfer everything. Or. I stood, trembling but clear-headed. And if I don't? That's when Helena whispered, say hello to karma, and pushed. Not violently, just enough. I plunged into the Atlantic, my blouse clinging to me like seaweed as I fought for air. I surfaced in time to see them sail off, already calling the lawyer. But fate wasn't on their side. I was rescued by Captain Eli Monroe and his grandson, Tyler, strangers with more humanity than my own kin. Eli wrapped me in salt-stained blankets as I explained. They tried to kill me, for the money. He believed me. And when I asked him not to report my rescue, he nodded. Sometimes doing right means bending the rules. He brought me to a secluded inn run by Mei Wong, discreet, no questions asked. There, I began to plan. Thomas and Helena were already spinning their web. Articles painted me as a confused widow lost at sea. Photos from my surprise birthday party, where they deliberately left me uninformed, now served as proof of decline. My obituary called me beloved. Donations requested for Alzheimer's research. The audacity made me ill. I needed help. Real help. May introduced me to Daniel Collins, a former detective turned PI. He listened, examined the documents, and agreed. They're methodical. Ruthless. But not invincible. If that twist caught you off guard, just wait, there's more. Give this video a like and subscribe now so you don't miss a second of what's next. He dug fast. Within 2 days, he had photos of Thomas and Helena visiting Whitmore Family Services, a discreet surrogacy facility. Documents revealed they'd arranged for a baby 8 months ago, a child to secure their claim to my estate. The surrogate? A 17-year-old runaway named Emily Carter. No family. No safety net. She'd died giving birth under suspicious circumstances. They killed her, I whispered. I can't prove it yet, Daniel said. But I know they're finalizing the estate transfer tomorrow at 10 a.m. That was it. Time to rise from the grave. I wouldn't confront them directly. Not yet. Instead, I'd haunt them. Unsettle them. Daniel called it psychological warfare. I called it justice. That morning, while they met with their lawyer, I visited my old home. A nurse named Rachel Miller answered the door, cradling a baby boy. She looked exhausted, kind. You're her, she whispered. Yes. And that baby, he's not theirs. We sat. I told her everything. Showed her the photos, the forged will, the truth about Emily Carter. Rachel cried. What do you want me to do? Watch them. Document everything. Help me make sure this child knows where he really came from. She nodded. His name should be Martin Emily, after his real mother and grandfather. Perfect. While I was there, Daniel delivered my message, handwritten, elegant, devastating. Asterisk Dear Thomas and Helena. Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We need to talk. Love, Mom. P.S. Tell little Martin Emily he's beautiful. Asterisk. They received it mid-meeting. According to Daniel, they ran from that office like it was on fire. When they arrived at my old home, expecting a serene afternoon, they found me. Alive. Holding their fake air. Hello, darlings, I said, not rising from my chair. Sign anything interesting today? Helena screamed. Thomas froze. Mom, how? Turns out drowning isn't easy, especially when you raised a fighter. They sputtered. Denied. Claimed grief. Claimed misunderstanding. But the evidence was on the table, photos, documents, timelines. And when Helena dared me to prove it, I smiled. Rachel, would you mind taking Martin to his room? The adults need a chat. They were finished. But I was just getting started. David froze, key still clutched in hand, eyes wide as if sheer disbelief might erase the scene before him. Shocked? I asked, savoring the moment. Turns out, rumors of my death were a little exaggerated. Though I must say, the obituary was quite the read. Donations to Alzheimer's charities? A poetic touch. Carol stepped into the room as planned, baby Robert Sarah in her arms, her voice shaking slightly. Mrs. Henderson wanted to meet her grandson properly, she said. Grandson? Vanessa croaked, her composure slipping. Yes, dear, I said calmly. Although you've spent a lot of time trying to convince the world I'm dead, it's a bit harder to drown than you thought, especially when someone's there to pull you out. David tried to recover. Mom, we thought. The Coast Guard searched for Flotsam. Not survivors. Curious how no one bothered to mention someone fell overboard. I cradled the child gently. Hello, little one. I'm your real grandmother, not the type who uses blood money to buy an heir. His name isn't Robert Sarah, Vanessa snapped, finding some footing. It's whatever we choose. He's our son. Is he? I asked, watching the infant's wide, curious eyes. Vanessa, exactly when did you give birth? Because 4 days ago on that yacht, you certainly didn't look postpartum. Vanessa flinched. The birth was private. Yes. Private enough that the real mother died in silence. A girl named Sarah Collins. 17. From Maine. No one to notice she vanished. Carol gasped. David mumbled, that's impossible. Never conspired with Miranda Torres? Never forged medical records, doctored my image, attempted to erase me for a fortune? Which part exactly are you denying, David? Vanessa, ever the strategist, cut in. Prove it. Accusations aren't convictions. I smiled, ice cold. Carol, would you take the baby upstairs? The adults need to chat. Once she'd gone, I opened a folder and spread the contents across the coffee table. Photos. Documents. Payments. Surveillance. Meet Miranda Torres, specialist in compassionate inheritance transitions. Translation, she helps families like you kill off the elderly. Vanessa tried to scoff, but her eyes lingered too long on the photos. 6 known victims. Dozens suspected. And guess what? You're in the middle of it. We never hurt anyone. Vanessa blurted. No? What about Sarah Collins? That girl died giving you this child. You exploited her, then erased her. David looked nauseated. We didn't know. Didn't know Torres ran a black market for heirs? Didn't know she orchestrated suspicious deaths for profit? Didn't know you were accomplices to murder? I placed Sarah's death certificate on the table. She died from unexpected cardiac arrest, according to the medical report. But a nurse told us she was healthy. Until Torres gave her a routine injection minutes before her death. Carol reappeared in the doorway, eyes wide. That nurse also confirmed Torres was in the room when it happened, I continued. And yes, I have an investigator. Documents. Witnesses. Medical records. Oh, and this. I retrieved a voice recorder. This entire conversation? Recorded. In Massachusetts, only one party needs to consent. This was my home, and I consented. Vanessa leapt up. You can't use that, it's entrapment. No. It's evidence. Fraud. Conspiracy. Accessory to murder. And attempted murder, that's personal. David finally whispered, what do you want? Everything, I said, voice low with fury. My assets returned. The baby adopted by a loving family who knows the truth. Torres in prison. And you, both of you, to live every day remembering you tried to kill your mother for money. And if we cooperate? Vanessa asked. I might not press attempted murder charges. The rest is out of my hands. They had 24 hours. They used it poorly. The next morning, Danny called. They're calling Torres nonstop. Mentioned a cleaner. Cleaner? I asked. The kind who eliminates problems permanently. Panic surged. How long do we have? Not long. He's flying in from New York today. He makes murders look like accidents. Mrs. Chen mobilized instantly. Within minutes, Jake had his truck running, and we were en route to a remote island cottage. Your son hired a hitman, Jake muttered. And he calls me dramatic, I whispered, sipping coffee at the kitchen table. Danny joined us, grim. It's bigger than Torres. 20 suspicious deaths, same patterns. They've infiltrated law enforcement, medical examiners, this is organized crime. Mrs. Chen pointed to a photo. She was at the hospital where I volunteer. Asking about lonely seniors. Scouting victims, Danny muttered. Then we make sure I live to testify, I said. I spent the morning writing everything down, every betrayal, every detail, every name. Just after noon, Danny got a call. They found the cleaner. Dead. Shot execution style. My blood froze. Torres is cleaning house. Your son may be next. And the baby. She'll kill him too, Jake said. Loose ends. I jumped up. We have to get him. Too dangerous, Danny warned. Then we give them what they want, me. Let them think they've won. You two stay close, get the baby, and we bring down the entire operation. Mrs. Chen, packing supplies, muttered, this is the dumbest plan I've ever heard. It's the only plan we've got, I said, testing the hidden microphones Danny had handed me. He'd been tracking them all morning. Time was running out. It's been 5 years since that stormy night when I walked back into the home I had once built with love and saw my son's face collapse in horror at the sight of me alive. 5 years since I took a stand not only for my life but for the life of an innocent child who never asked to be born into a world of greed, deception, and betrayal. The years have not dulled the pain of what David and Vanessa did. There are days when I still wake up startled, reaching for the past, wondering if it had all just been a fever dream. But then I look at Robert Sarah Harrison, now 5 years old, bright-eyed and full of questions about the world, and I know that everything I went through was real, and necessary. Our days are quieter now. We live in a cottage on the coast of Maine, surrounded by pine trees and ocean wind, far from the ghosts of Beacon Hill. Robert calls me Gran, and he has my husband's eyes, Sarah Collins's smile, and a heart bigger than anyone I've ever known. He started school this year, and when the other children ask about his unusual name, he proudly tells them it's because he's named after 2 heroes. He knows his story. Not all of it, not yet, but enough to understand that he came from love, even if the world around him didn't start that way. Every night before bed, we light a candle on the windowsill for Sarah. It's our ritual. Our way of making sure her memory stays alive, not just in our hearts but in the fabric of Robert's life. Meanwhile, I found purpose. Together with Mrs. Chen and Jake, we started an organization called Second Light, a quiet network of advocates, lawyers, and volunteers who help elderly individuals facing exploitation from their own families. We've saved dozens of lives, uncovered hidden abuse, and exposed financial predators who, like Miranda Torres, knew exactly how to manipulate the vulnerable. Danny Crawford remains an integral part of our circle. Though he officially returned to the FBI, he consults with Second Light and ensures our actions remain clean, legal, and impossible to ignore. He always says our work is what keeps him believing in justice. Sometimes I receive letters from families we helped. One woman wrote, I was days away from signing over everything to my son, until I watched your story. Now I have my life, and my peace of mind, back. And yet, shadows still linger. We uncovered other branches of the network Miranda Torres was part of. She may be gone, but the structure she built left cracks in the system, cracks we are still working tirelessly to repair. As for David and Vanessa, they are still incarcerated. David sends birthday cards now. They arrive each year like clockwork, always with a short note, I hope you're both happy. I never respond. Forgiveness is something I give freely to the innocent. But for him, for Vanessa, and for the lives their actions destroyed, forgiveness is not a right, it's a journey, and one I don't owe them. Because Robert deserves a life unburdened by the sins of his bloodline. He deserves love, truth, and safety. And I will do whatever it takes to give him that. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether your story matters, whether your voice could ever make a difference, hear me clearly, it does. And it can. This isn't just my story anymore. It's his. It's Sarah's. It's yours. We rise, not just to survive, but to protect. And sometimes, the strongest families are the ones we choose to build from the ashes of the ones we lost. 5 years later, our lives look nothing like they once did. The house where everything happened was sold at auction, too many memories, too many ghosts. I used the money from the sale to start a foundation in Sarah Collins's name, dedicated to protecting vulnerable teenagers from exploitation. We've already helped dozens of young women find safe housing, education, and legal protection. Her name will never be forgotten. Little Robert Sarah just turned 5. He loves puzzles, peanut butter sandwiches, and asking a million questions before bedtime. Sometimes, when I watch him sleep, I think about everything that had to go wrong so he could have a chance to grow up right. I think about the young girl who gave her life for his, and I silently promise her, again and again, that I won't fail him. Carol Peterson still helps care for him. She's more than a nanny, she's part of our family. We often sit on the porch, watching Robert Sarah play in the garden, trading stories that now feel like someone else's life. And me? I found peace, not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from surviving. I lived through betrayal, through the worst kind of heartbreak. I watched the people I loved become strangers, criminals, monsters. But I also discovered what real love looks like. What courage sounds like. And what justice feels like when it finally arrives. David and Vanessa remain behind bars. They missed Robert Sarah's first steps, his first words, every birthday. They will never know the person he becomes. That's the cost of their choices. Miranda Torres will die in prison. The empire she built on the backs of the elderly is gone. The network dismantled. The names she erased, the families she destroyed, they all have voices now. And I made sure the world heard them. I used to think I was just a retired widow, someone whose best years were behind her. But it turns out, my story wasn't over. It just needed the right reason to keep going. My name is Margaret Harrison. I died once. But I came back stronger. Not for revenge. For truth. For justice. For love. And for the future of a little boy who deserves to grow up in a world where no one tries to erase his past. That's my legacy. And I'm proud of it. Thank you for listening. And remember, some stories don't end when the curtain falls. Some stories begin when someone refuses to stay silent. If this story moved you or made you think, like the video, share it with someone, and hit subscribe. Because here, every story gives voice to those who need to be heard.